Well, hello, that's me again. Today is July 27, 2023, and let's do a little bit of the SitRep from the start, and then we'll go to the more fundamental issue, which really have been bothering me for a while now. But let's start with this. We already know, you already saw it, everybody already have been discussing it a million times. This is, as you can see yourself, the Sun, this is the tabloid from the United Kingdom, which reports on how Ukrainian kamikaze drone crashed into Russian tank on the battlefield. Obviously, they got it 180 degrees absolutely wrong, because obviously this is one of the Russian drones attacking the Leopard 2 tank, and it blew it up, and there you go, that was the end of it. But obviously, this is just indicative of the general miserable level of this cabal of the so-called journalist or media class, or the fourth estate as it's being called nowadays, that the special military operation exposed them as absolutely people who absolutely have no clue and have no skills whatsoever. They're just merely conduits for propaganda, or propagandists and ideologues themselves, which have no understanding of how the modern world works, and that is why many of them are always kind of leaning towards the either complete BS or their woke ideology, because this is the only thing they know. That, again, journalism as such is not a valid profession. Reporter is a different story, but those reporters are, very hard to come by. And so when you look at this, this is like pretty much what you need to know. And this is why the combined West is in a deep, deep trouble, to put it mildly. And it also tells you why pretty much public opinion not only being misinformed deliberately, which is absolutely without a doubt, it's just basically the agenda, but also because those people who inform public opinion and those people who try to shape things, they are just cretins, basically. So you take out any guy from some American or British think tank or tabloid or newspaper. I don't think so. Anybody has in the West today nothing but tabloids. I mean, everything what you see today is tabloid. Wall Street Journal, New York Times, all like this build. And here is another laughable story. Russians already openly mock it. It's just ridiculous. Here's your build. Yeah, it is German tabloid, but the point is the German tabloid refers that to military specialists, some Bundeswehr military specialists, which obviously tell why Ukrainians cannot do anything right, because guess what? They do not know how to concentrate properly those armor fists to break through Russian defenses. Well, I really appreciate them harking back to, halcyon days of Blitzkrieg and all those armor penetrations on the Eastern Front before the Wehrmacht was essentially destroyed. But the problem is, of course, even if we discount the fact that this is Bild, this is obviously tabloid, it's a sewer basically for consumption of Germans who do not want to know anything about the world outside. But when you look at this, and this is written by Julian Röpke actually, and you have to ask the questions, have those guys in Bundeswehr heard about ISR, which is, of course, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance? Do they even understand that basically concentrating the armor against such military power like Russia means that basically you will be wiped out in no time? It's like, and if those are military professionals, they need to be basically immediately discharged from the service and not allowed near any modern military whatsoever. I mean, just keep them away, because they're gonna kill a lot of people. And fact is, this is the only way that Ukraine was able to preserve some resource, which they're evidently throwing now again at Russians, and Russians, dutifully oblige and slaughter them, is because they were dispersing as much as possible. And actually, this is the only thing which people in Pentagon were capable of coming up. I mean, because because they have no clue. And to understand what is going on in this respect, and this is people very often misinterpret what I say, that, oh, that was a nice rant from you, Andrei. No, it's not a rant. It's the fact to point out that there are war crime which is happening right now, initiated by the United States and its Western lapdogs, is not only driven by the malice, which it is. Just look at Victoria Nuland, for example, who is now second big honcho in State Department, and that woman doesn't even understand what is going on, but she's already acting Secretary of the State. So, but we are talking about not only about malice, which isn't there, which are Russophobia, racial hatred of Russians and Slavs in general, isn't there. It always was there. No, we're talking about the part of this slaughter which is happening is due to actually complete military incompetence. Those people don't understand what they're talking about. Now we have these guys, and I talked about him and this group too, but here it is. Look at this. They report on the 25th that military analyst, Ukrainian offensive was poorly planned. David Sadler reports on this on the 22nd, and, well, guess from 3 times who was this military expert? Well, military expert is Mr. Gatti. So who is Mr. Gatti we'll discuss later, but look what he writes in this basically interview. And he says, no armed forces in the world currently has practical experience of using combined arms combat to overcome such a dense and deep defense systems as the Russians have established in southern and eastern Ukraine. We have not seen such a type of defense in Europe since the end of the Second World War. And then he makes this conclusion, which is actually correct. And I am on the record, and I'm pretty sure Mr. Gatti read me, but and he probably listens to me, despite the fact that he was absent for a couple of weeks, visiting frontline, quoting him. But I mean, what could he figure out there? I don't know. But here it is. Hardly anyone can offer their expertise to Ukraine here. The only ones with limited experience of using large-scale coordinated operations is the United States, and they can do everything. That's why the first phase of the counteroffensive was all about trial and error. But the Ukrainians learned their lessons. Well, first, the guy is clueless here. First, the United States cannot offer any expertise except for the throwing bunch of the Ukrainian cannon fodder, trying to find those weak spots, so to speak, because that's what they teach them in military academies. And again, when you basically study your military history based on the operations by pattern, and also if you study it by based on the beating the crap out of the fourth-rate Iraqi military, then sure, what would you expect? And obviously Ukrainians didn't learn their lessons. The only thing they were doing was desperate attempts to preserve whatever's left of their reserves. And then here it is, and structural fall in the middle of the war. Yeah, sure, Mr. Gatti obviously never doesn't understand what structural reform is, but here he says, the quality of equipment and training of individual soldiers was very good. No, it wasn't, but again, this is Mr. Gatti. We were told this several times, and we could also observe it. The problem may lie more in staff training for senior officers. Well, forgive me, Mr. Gatti, who have been preparing those senior officers for the last 9 years, and you guessed it, Pentagon and London, the general staff of the British Army, which is not the army really in any normal sense. And when you look at this, it's the guy kind of throws things at the wall and sees what sticks, and it's difficult to explain to Gatti or whoever went there that actually United States Army has zero experience of the operational planning of this scale when you have the real enemy to fight. And that's when we go and look at Mr. Gatti's curriculum vitae, and guess what? Franz Stefan Gatti, Consulting Senior Fellow and International Institute for Strategic Studies. So basically the shyster organization, which doesn't know, well, you know what doesn't know from what. So look at his education. Study abroad international relations and affairs. Bachelor of Arts international relations and affairs. Master of Arts international relations and affairs. Show me any background in the military sciences, in the operational planning, in the tactics, not as it's taught in the Hollywood movies, but as it taught to the professional military officers who graduate military academies. And I'm talking about serious tactics, let alone when we talk about the tactics of level of like naval or air force or air defense or even the communication systems and electronic warfare. None whatsoever. You will not find anything here. But guess what? He was advisor for Defense Science Board in the Austrian Armed Forces. Wow. So, and yet this guy writes this garbage basically, and you look at this and it's just you scratch your head and you begin to look even at Wall Street Journal, another basically, how to put it politely, tabloid, and this was when it was 2 days ago. They write this: Ukraine stalled offensive puts Biden in an easy political position. Oh, it's more than an easy political position, and we discussed it before, but let's see what those guys write in their Wall Street Journal. And look at this. The slow pace of Ukrainian counteroffensive. It's not counteroffensive. Good God. I mean, will they learn any basic definitions of the, the tactical and operational and strategic nature? So this Ukrainian counteroffensive against entrenched Russian invaders is dimming hopes that negotiations for an end to the fighting could come this year and raising the specter of an open-ended conflict, according to Western officials. Well, Western officials primarily are ignoramuses. They do not know what warfare, modern warfare is. And then they write, a potential stalemate would test President Biden's stated strategy of pouring billions of dollars in military aid into Ukraine to enable Kyiv to negotiate with Russia from a position of strength. It could also challenge the West's continuing ability to supply weaponry that is already in short supply and provide political fodder for the opposing U.S. support for the war. Well, let me put it this way. You can take every single so-called military expert and journal from Wall Street Journal, New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, and The Bild, the London Times, Financial Times, and you can basically fire them for being propagandists and BSers. Most of them are, including those American generals who basically are afflicted by their professional envy and jealousy. And as I already stated, this is the basically 800-pound gorilla in the room, which everybody wants to ignore. But again, there is no American general which will be able to run, forget division or the corps in what is happening right now. They do not even understand how this whole thing unfolds and how it is run on the level of the C4 ISR. They, paradoxically enough, because the United States was one of the major, so to speak, pushers of some interesting operational concepts which are related to the high tech, if you wish. Obviously, later elaborated by, and elaborated being in quotation marks, by Hollywood. And these people still, and you look at this and they know some facts. And if you go to and begin to look at the basically philosophical issue or metaphysical issue of all that, you will go back to the ancient Greek, so to speak, concept of the fox and the hedgehog. Well, and you have primarily foxes right now running around, and blind foxes, and also illiterate foxes who run today in primarily Western capitals, who and they are in a panic. It's established fact, and they do not understand what they are facing. And here is the real U.S. military professional, the Chief of Staff of Colin Powell, Colonel Wilkerson. And if you look attentively at his video about 2 days ago, I deliberately stopped it at the 4 minutes. The reason I stopped it at 4 minutes because basically first half of Wilkerson communications with going underground is excellent. And he describes basically the situation that there is no stalemate, there is just slaughter of the remaining armed forces of Ukraine, whatever remains of it, and then again everything comes down to Russia dictating the conditions of the capitulation for the combined West. And but on 4 minutes, he makes this fundamental statement that no, he's not afraid of Russians using nuclear weapons. But what he says, he is more afraid of the United States using this, because as I am already on the record, United States is a biased nation, and it is the nation which doesn't want to fight real wars. And to understand what I'm talking about, recall Mr. Michael Ledine's doctrine that he says, he stated in the middle 1990s that, you know what, we have to take once every 10 years some crappy country, I quoting it, and smack it against the wall to show that we mean business. Well, obviously, they miscalculated, that ran into their country which in military history dwarfs anything United States ever experienced. And suddenly they have the situation, and even Wall Street Journal, whose the only task is to misinform people, as it is primarily for the Western media, and they admit about possible stalemate. No, there is no stalemate. There will not be stalemate. The destruction of the NATO infrastructure in Eastern Europe is proceeding apace, and Wilkerson talks about it. He's talking about that it's over. The NATO is over pretty much for all intents and purposes. And when you look at this, you begin to kind of get the idea why this change of tone, and suddenly you have sudden glimpses, shimmering lights of truth, because they cannot lie anymore. You can't. I mean, this is modern media in terms of media environment. And basically, we are looking at the end of the mainstream media as we used to know them, because they are lying. The only thing they do, they lie. There is no, any other opinion about it. They just lie. And Wilkerson speaks about it, and he speaks about it how the NATO is in a complete panic mode. And again, what they call possible stalemate will be what I am on record many times, that Russia will be dictating her conditions of surrender, so to speak, based on the ultimatum from the December 2021, and it's in the end it's going to be the rolling back NATO back to the pre-1997 borders. And by the way, there is another news floating there which are absolutely astonishing, of course, that Hungary is actually, the rumor is floating, the people talking about it, that Hungary may decide to leave EU. And fact is, considering the primarily normal people living in Hungary and living with only 2 genders, which is man and a woman, willing to create families, grow children, and things like that, I mean, they are absolutely bad fit for the European Union, which is completely, it's basically Satanism, which is happening right now in the combined West in terms of the policies, including the war crimes, including the crimes against humanity they commit in Ukraine. And now we have Cy Hirsch saying, oh, Washington was behind Crimean breach. Of course it was. I mean, it just, it's really downright risible now. Russians openly mocking all that now. They know, they are aware, they are much more sophisticated than most bureaucrats from State Department on the issues of the foreign policy and the issues of the strategy. Actually, probably they better, average civilian is better than some, graduate of West Point by now. So, and when you look at this, like, yeah, that's interesting, but I wanted to show you something, why also the grain deal was stopped. It was yesterday. Federal Service of Security Russia, FSB, as you can see yourself. Oh, no, it's actually today. Russia stopped another Turkish grain, so to speak, vessel which was delivering the grain in the framework of the grain deal. And look at this. There is identification of this bulker, which is BMO River, which was going through Turkey to Rostov-Don. And guess what? They found the traces of the explosives on it. This is a civilian ship. This is the ship which was delivering grain. It is second Turkish ship. So that explains to you now why Russia now in a full-blown demolishing mode of the Ukrainian ports, and why this vessel have been stopped, and it's not being allowed to pass under the Crimean Bridge. So there you go. The issues are a little bit more complicated than we might think, but this is just one of the issues which I wanted to discuss to you. But let's go to what many people love, and they basically adore this military porn. And let me show you something. I went to the Barnes & Noble and I bought those, combat aircraft, latest magazine, so I also bought this thing, Air Forces magazines, so, and as you can see yourself, there's like a little bit of about Ukraine-Russia war, and they talk about U-95s. The reason I bought them, this is the freshest ones, I believe, and is because it demonstrates and a very interesting trend, because I remember looking at similar publications about even 8 months ago, and those were absolutely stuffed with those articles about operations of the Ukrainian Air Forces and how they did this and that, and some of them actually were pushing this Ghost of Kiev story too. And they, of course, Mr. Mladenov and all those kind of the shysters who write for all kinds of the military porn magazines like that, they were using, obviously, primarily, as you might have guessed it, Ukrainian sources and Ukrainian data, which is, well, by now, in accordance to Kiev regime propaganda, this Goebbelsonian cabal, basically, supported by MI6 and CIA, Russians should run out of the air forces. But it's actually the other way around, and that is why you do not see every day adding many, well, sometimes it's 1, 2 within a week of the combat aircraft from Ukraine, because they cannot fly. They take off and they shut down immediately. So, and that brings us to this very important issue which I wanted to talk about, because as I'm on the record, the United States lost the arms race to Russia. It lost it not only on some important sectors like hypersonics, but it lost its on the majority of the cross section of the military activity. I'm not talking about in operation planning. There are no people in Pentagon who really can plan anything like this, what Gerasimov and his general staff planned. There's simply no skills for that. But the point is that actually Mr. Zhirinovsky, remember this flamboyant late Mr. Zhirinovsky, the guy who, oh my gosh, he was a firebrand, and sometimes he was doing some stupid things. But look at this. Yesterday it was published, and this is from 2019. This is from it's yesterday publication, and guess what? This is his note, which he was sending to some government officials. And as you might understand, Zhirinovsky had the direct access to Mr. Putin. He had direct access to Mr. Medvedev and Mr. Mishustin. So he was a big honcho. He was a real political maverick in many respects. And look what he wrote. In 1990s, United States, by the means of the bribing the bureaucrats and businessmen, destroyed Russian aviation industry. Now, of course, Russian aviation industry is being restored, but where is the investigation? Who specifically were the basically people who participated, co-participants of the destruction of the airspace industry, and how are they punished? This was his 2019 note. We know that things are going that way, but what is important, that's what Mr. Zhirinovsky says, which is true. He speaks there because it was internal note, it wasn't for the for public, that the United States were behind trying to destroy the Russian aerospace and the Soviet aerospace, and there are many facts which testify to that. But of course things changed dramatically, and now obviously when we see this whole mythology, and especially for some reason the United States considers itself a big honcho in terms of the air operations, it is not, because it flies primarily with people with no air forces. So you know what, it's like me beating the little kitten outside outside there somewhere on the street and say, hey, look at me, so how tough I am. Well, guess what? Russia is different, and the only thing which is left for those people, especially in the American propaganda, is the fact to, smear Russians, and Russian Air Force with all kind of garbage like this, magazines and things like that. So because they do not understand what is going on, they don't know how it works, and those people who write there primarily, they might have many titles, and even like combat missions. I flew 100 combat missions over Iraq. Against who? Yeah, land attack mode against the totally suppressed air defense, which was non-existent to start with. And you look at this, it's just like, sure, tell me the story, guy. And the famous and their favorite shtick is to basically smear the dirt on, for example, SU-57. SU-57 is, of course, the 5th generation aircraft, and nobody knows the whole what is the number which fly. Those SU-57s fly right now. How many of them fly in the special military operations? People say they can identify 5 or 6. Some people say it's 11 or 12, but the Russians have been churning those out really like there is no tomorrow. So we might see the significantly larger number of them flying. And the question when people, especially this favorite shtick of the masturbators to military porn and people who graduated from the Top Gun Maverick School of Combat Air Studies, it's the stealth. And here let me explain. I did it before and I will explain it again. If you ask anyone who has any serious background in military which deals with the high technology, real high technology, which involves all those air defense, anti-ballistic missile defenses, the detection, signal processing, electronic warfare, targeting, and things of this nature, this is what military professionals study, and they have to understand mathematical, physical thing about it. They will tell you the fundamental thing about fighting the modern war is the resolution of the uncertainties. And here's the issue of stealth. I mean, stealth is primarily, it's a figment of imagination. The fact that the aircraft, Russians don't even call it stealth. They call it low observability, and they call it the fairly reduced physical fields of the technology, of the military technology. SU-57 is a stealth fighter, but it is much more than that, and Russians have a long tradition of the net-centricity. And when people ask what net-centric is really, and I already explained to you how those Metcalfe's law go, how the value of the networks calculated, they are actually primarily those net-centric warfare methods, and obviously the foundation of the net-centricity, which is the sensor fusion, they exist there only for resolution of the uncertainties. What is uncertainty? Uncertainty is this. For example, if you look at the very primitive explanation of the even detection of the radar, as you can see yourself, you get a lot of all kinds of errors and interference that in the end there you get, obviously it's kind of embellished, it's much smaller than that, but for example, you get there in surface in the surface or air radar, you have this uncertainty zone, which is ABCD type curved trapezoid, if you wish, and this is the zone where the target allegedly is. That is why I always laugh my ass off when I heard some bunch of the morons saying that, oh yeah, stealth, you can see it, after the stealth have been discredited completely by the way it was described in the United States, and say, you can see it, but you cannot shoot at it. Oh, really? No, if you can see it, you can shoot at it. It's just a matter, again, of the RCS, radar cross-section diagram, how you look at things, and if, for example, F-35 is fairly goodly radar not undetectable. You need to have shorter range, so to speak, of the detection. But for example, from the sides you can see it easily, and that is why, for example, the article by the Bundeswehr people have been suppressed when they saw it. I mean, easily on their radar. So it's all primarily garbage. I mean, it's all marketing and selling this crap, and that is why they were hysterical when Turkey bought S-400, because S-400 sees it all. I mean, doesn't matter, I mean, the aspect, so to speak, or diagram. So, and when you have obviously dense air defense, and when you have all of it net-centric, that's what Russia has, and when you have SU-57 and SU-35s who are net-centric aircraft, this is what you have. And then of course you can fuse data. What does it mean? You can fuse data from obviously the radar, you can fuse data from the infrared search and track, you can fuse data from other types of the detection, and then you can exchange it and fuse it within the network. And guess what? If you are in a different positions all over the place, including the land-based air defense, guess what? You get what is called cooperative engagement capability, and you see everything beautifully. And you can obviously just target it, develop the targeting, develop the firing solution, and once the something like R-37 is within the range of its radar seeker and its powerful radar seeker, and you don't need to the accuracy to 10 centimeters. A couple kilometers will be enough, and guess what? You're not going to survive that. And here we have to understand, this is what I constantly state. It's not the issue of the squares or what have you. It is the issue of the ellipses. How and why those ellipses of the probabilities do exist, and how they process. Today they are processed with all those gradients and weight characteristics of the lines of the positions or lines of the detections. Modern computers do it really fast. And when you look at the sensor fusion, there we go. Sensor A, sensor B, and you can continue to develop this diagram, sensor C, sensor D, what have you in the network. This is what, for example, SU-57 and SU-35 and the SU-30 SM have. You can go to, expand this network, and as you can see yourself, they share with themselves composite tracks. So that means they will see any kind of the target, and that is why F-35 will never see the combat. The same as F-22, because they will be shut down immediately within the zone of the operations of Russian Air Force and Russian air defense. It doesn't matter how stealth they are. Again, stealth as of lately became a mocking term, so to speak, a joke. And when you look at the sensor fusion, I showed it before. Here it is. Here are the different tracks, for example. When you have just heterogeneous sensors which are not fused, and you have the fused sensor position estimates. Look at this. As you can see yourself, you see the spread on the left without fusion and estimates, and here it is. On the right, you can see yourself, you get the precise position, and once you have the precise position, you can easily develop. That's targeting. Precise position is targeting. It is usually azimuth and range and elevation if you are also flying. So you get this, and here it is. Well, guess what? Russians are extremely good at that. And when you look at actually, as I already stated, from fundamental Alberts and Garska work, here it is. If you look attentively, these are those ellipses. And I'm not going to go into mathematics of it, but basically pretty much any probabilistic and statistical analysis of the targeting is based on ellipses. Why it is so, it's a separate issue, but you can always look up the formula of the ellipse and understand how the gradients and mean squared errors are factored in. But as you can see yourself, even the during sensor network, how it generates those ellipses, and as you can see yourself, the closer those projectiles, be them ballistic missile or cruise missile, fly to, the smaller becomes this three-dimensional ellipse. And this is what is in the foundation of the modern warfare. It's not some kind of funny looking platform which looks stealthy. It doesn't work like this. It is very complex. And again, I'm not even going into the mathematics. We can go obviously to the Kalman filter on, discuss it, but what's the point? You don't need to know that. You just need to be aware of the existence of this whole mathematical apparatus, which is a probabilistic analysis and signal processing, and how the sensors are fused. And this is what Russia does combat way, in combat, actual combat, every single day. And as you might understand, there's no better armed forces now in doing this than Russian ones. And this is simply, that explains you why, when you combine also with the gigantic industrial potential, which easily supplies all required and necessary industrial and military hardware to Russian armed forces, you have what you have. Wall Street Journal begins to panic because there is a possible stalemate. No, there's no stalemate. There is an annihilation of the basically armed forces of Ukraine, which was the best proxy United States ever had. Will United States go and fight Russia? Good luck with that. So this is what I wanted to tell you about. And so guys, as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford, please support me on the Patreon and buy me a coffee on too. And I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye.